The screech of tires echoed in the night as the car skidded to a stop. In the dim light of the alley, shadows moved, quick, silent, purposeful. Jody's heart raced, but her eyes were glued to the rearview mirror, watching the figure approach, the one she never thought she'd see again. The woman was cloaked in darkness, her features hidden, but there was no mistaking the unmistakable shape of her. Jody's breath caught in her throat. "How?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of her pulse pounding in her ears. A soft knock on the window brought her back to reality. She froze, caught between the familiarity of the woman's presence and the undeniable truth. Nothing about this was a coincidence. Her mind flashed back to the months before, the betrayal, the lies, the promises broken in the wake of the storm. Jody had thought she'd moved on, that the world had settled back into the quiet rhythm of normality. But she was wrong. The past never stays buried. And now, here it was, knocking on her window once again. The key question lingered, heavy in the air. What was she doing here? The answers she'd longed for, the ones that might explain the chaos of her past, were still just out of reach, and she knew deep down that finding them might destroy her future. Jody Carlson had always been the dependable one, the one people turned to when they needed someone to listen, someone to help, someone to hold things together. As a freelance graphic designer, she spent her days in front of a screen, creating worlds and stories for others while her own life seemed to drift by in quiet monotony. She wasn't unhappy, far from it, but there was a nagging sense of something missing, something unresolved. Her apartment was a cozy, minimalist space in the heart of the city, filled with modern furniture and small touches that made it hers. Her life, by all appearances, was neat and orderly. She had a steady stream of clients, a small circle of close friends, and a family she was on good terms with. Her mother, a retired school teacher, and her younger brother Alex, who had just begun his career in law enforcement. Their interactions were simple, pleasant. Sunday dinners, texts about nothing in particular, the occasional phone call to catch up. But Jody felt the weight of unspoken things. At 31, she should have been more content with the life she'd built, but there was something about her relationships that felt surface level, as if she were going through the motions without really being part of the dance. Her friendship with Mia, a vibrant woman she'd met in college, was one example. They'd been inseparable during their early 20s, sharing secrets and dreams. But lately, things had changed. Mia had become distant, her messages sporadic, her phone calls shorter. At first, Jody chalked it up to the busyness of life, but the absence of her best friend began to gnaw at her, leaving a sense of hollow emptiness where once there had been a bond she thought was unbreakable. At work, Jody had a few clients who kept coming back, but she had never quite found her niche. Her designs were good, even great, but there was something formulaic about them. She felt like a cog in a machine, churning out work without ever creating something truly personal. Something that made her feel alive. The cracks in her perfect life were small at first. An unreturned call from Mia, an offhand comment from her mom about how she seemed distant lately, the occasional wave of anxiety when she realized how many years had passed since she had truly felt challenged or excited. But there were other moments too, glimpses into something darker. She sometimes caught herself staring at the blank canvas on her screen, wondering what she was even doing with her life. It wasn't until one particular Sunday dinner, a few months before, that things began to unravel. Her mother had asked casually, "Are you seeing anyone, Jody? You know, your father and I both think it's time for you to start thinking about settling down." The question wasn't new. Jody had been hearing it for years, but this time, something in her shifted. She found herself bristling, a quiet defensiveness rising in her chest. She wasn't sure what had made her angry. Was it the implication that she hadn't done enough with her life, or that her happiness was somehow incomplete because she was single? Later that evening, after a short conversation with Alex, she went for a walk to clear her head. The crisp air did nothing to calm her, but it gave her time to think. What was she missing? Was it truly the lack of a partner? The absence of Mia? Or was it something deeper? A loss of purpose? Something more fundamental hidden beneath the surface? The answers she sought were elusive, like a fog she couldn't quite see through. But one thing was certain. There were forces at play in her life, old forces that had long been buried, and they were beginning to rise again. And no matter how much she wished it weren't true, she knew that soon everything would change. It was a Monday evening when Jody's life changed. The sound of her phone vibrating across the table was what broke the stillness. She was sitting at her favorite cafe, sipping a half-empty cup of coffee, surrounded by the soft hum of casual conversation and clinking mugs. She had been lost in her thoughts about the design project that was due in 2 days, and the loneliness that seemed to creep back into her life every time she sat still long enough to notice it. She glanced at the screen, expecting another message from a client. Instead, it was a text from Mia. The first message was simple enough. "We need to talk." Jody's stomach flipped. She'd been waiting for something like this for months, but the coldness of the words sent a chill through her. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she debated how to respond. She typed and deleted a response twice before settling on, "What's going on?" The reply came almost immediately. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. But it's not just about me. It's about us." Before she could type anything else, her phone rang. Jody's heart skipped. She knew it was Mia, but the voice on the other end was strained, not like the familiar, confident tone she remembered. Mia's voice quivered as she spoke. "Jody, She hesitated, then blurted, "I've been seeing someone." The words were a punch to the gut. Jody's grip tightened on her phone and she blinked, as if the mere act of blinking would erase the moment, make it go away. "You've been..." "What?" "I've been seeing someone, for a while. I didn't tell you because I was afraid. I thought you'd hate me and..." Jody sat back in her chair, her eyes wide. She felt like the room was spinning, the buzz of conversation around her turning into a muffled hum. Her mind raced. Someone? Who? But she couldn't find the words. Mia continued, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Jody. I've been so selfish. I should have been honest with you, but there's more. It's not just any relationship." Mia hesitated again. "It's with Alex." Jody froze. For a moment, time stood still. The words didn't make sense. Her mind screamed for understanding, but there was only confusion and the horrible certainty that she wasn't hearing things right. "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "What did you say?" "I'm so sorry. Please don't hate me." "But it's been going on for months. He didn't mean for you to find out like this. Neither of us did." Jody felt as though the ground beneath her had collapsed, her feet slipping into some abyss she couldn't even see. Her brother? Mia? The words seemed to echo in her mind, reverberating with disbelief. The betrayal sliced through her chest deeper than any pain she'd ever known. The anger, confusion, and raw hurt surged through her like a tidal wave. "I don't even know what to say," Jody muttered, struggling to process the flood of emotions crashing over her. Her heart raced. Her brother Alex, the person she had always relied on, always trusted, and Mia, the one person she thought would never do something like this to her. She had always believed they were her safe people, the ones who wouldn't let her down. But they had. Both of them. Jody didn't know what to do with the shock coursing through her. Her mind was still reeling from the phone call when she suddenly realized she wasn't alone. She looked up, startled to see the familiar face of a man standing in front of her. It was Ben, her ex. He had entered the cafe quietly and was now standing before her, an expression of concern mixed with a quiet understanding in his eyes. "What's going on, Jody? I heard you on the phone, and you look pale." Jody blinked, shaking her head. "It's Mia and Alex. They..." Her voice broke, and the words tangled in her throat. She wanted to shout, to throw something, to somehow make sense of what had just happened. But Ben's steady presence, calm and grounded, felt like an anchor in the storm. Ben had been there before, through the ups and downs of their relationship, and although they had broken up nearly a year ago, he had remained a friend. A dependable one. A safe one. But now, seeing him there, Jody felt a strange mix of gratitude and anger. How long? She asked in a shaky voice. Ben frowned, taking a deep breath. I'm sorry, Jody. I'm sorry that you have to go through this. I don't have all the answers, but I know this isn't easy. Jody closed her eyes, trying to make sense of the swirling emotions within her. I have to do something, she said, more to herself than anyone else. I can't just sit here and let them get away with this. I need answers. I need to know why. Mia's face crumpled, and she reached out for Jody's hand, but Jody pulled away. I don't even know who you are anymore, Mia. I thought you were my person, the one I could count on. And now, you've stolen the one thing that was left. My trust. Mia bit her lip, clearly distraught. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me. I don't know what to believe anymore, Jody muttered, standing up. I need time to think. I can't do this today. Jody left the cafe, her heart heavy with the weight of betrayal. She could feel the air closing in on her as she walked aimlessly down the street, but her mind was still spinning. How could Mia have done this? How could she have chosen Alex over me? It felt like the world she'd known had suddenly become a foreign place, a place she couldn't recognize anymore. Her next stop was home. She needed to talk to Alex, confront him. But when she walked into the apartment, she was greeted by an unexpected sight. Alex was sitting on the couch, his face pale, as if he had been waiting for this moment too. Jody, he began, his voice tight, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but you need to understand that. No. Jody's voice was cold, sharper than she intended. Don't you dare explain this. I don't need to hear your excuses. You've known me your entire life, Alex. How could you do this to me? Alex ran a hand through his hair, looking like he was about to crack under the weight of her words. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, Jody spat. You both did. And now, I don't know who the hell I can trust anymore. She slammed the door behind her as she left, her anger a tidal wave crashing over everything in its path. She was drowning in it, betrayed by her best friend, her brother. The people she had trusted most had broken her, and she was lost in the aftermath. What was left for her now? Jody sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her, but her focus was nowhere near the work she was supposed to be doing. The coffee beside her had long since gone cold, and the sunlight streaming in through the window only made her feel more isolated, more exposed in the quiet aftermath of everything that had happened. She hadn't spoken to Mia or Alex since their confrontations. The raw emotions from that day still burned, but now there was a simmering calm beneath it all, a cold clarity that had crept in. She couldn't undo what had been done, couldn't change the fact that the two people she had loved and trusted most had shattered her world. But she could change how she responded. For the first time since the betrayal, Jody didn't feel like a victim. Yes, she had been hurt. Deeply. Yes, she was angry. But that didn't have to define her. She was done being passive. She was done letting her life be dictated by the whims and mistakes of others. She had to take control. Her first step was to figure out what she wanted from this mess. Did she want revenge? That old desire to make Mia and Alex feel the weight of their betrayal tugged at her. A dark temptation. But Jody knew deep down that revenge would only poison her further, that it would leave her empty in the end. Forgiveness? The thought was almost laughable. Not yet. Not after everything. Maybe in time. But for now, that wasn't something she could offer. She had to rebuild herself first. She had to heal before any kind of peace could be made. Walk away. That was the option that felt both the hardest and the most freeing. Walking away meant cutting ties. Permanently, it seemed. But as painful as it was, that felt like the only real choice if she wanted to regain control over her life. But how would she move forward? What came next? She leaned forward, rubbing her temples, thinking. She wasn't alone in this. Not entirely. There was someone who had always been there for her, even when things were at their darkest. Ben. Her ex, sure, but someone who had remained a steady presence in her life even after their breakup. He had a quiet wisdom about him, a groundedness that Jody sorely needed right now. She grabbed her phone, typing out a quick message. Can we talk? Need some advice. Less than 10 minutes later, her phone rang. It was Ben. Jody, he said, his voice as calm as ever. You okay? She sighed, grateful for his steady tone. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I feel like I've lost everything. My best friend, my brother. I don't know who I am without them. Ben paused, letting the silence stretch between them before speaking again. I get it. But this isn't the end of you. This is a chance for you to choose who you want to be. Not who Mia or Alex think you are, or who you thought you were, but who you actually want to be moving forward. You've always been strong, Jody. This is just a different kind of strength. Jody's mind spiraled as her mother's words sank in. Something bigger? What was going on with Alex? Her gut twisted, and for the first time since the betrayal, she felt the stirrings of fear. Real fear. Jody's voice was shaky. What did the letter say? Her mother sighed, her voice barely audible. It talked about money, debt, and a deal gone wrong. Jody, I don't think Alex has been honest with anyone, least of all you. The weight of the words crushed Jody, and the world tilted beneath her feet. Debt? A deal gone wrong? This wasn't just a simple betrayal. This wasn't just about her brother and her best friend getting too close. This was something deeper, darker. The thought made her blood run cold. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Jody demanded, frustration and confusion building in her chest. I didn't know what to do, her mother said quietly. I wanted to protect him. But now, I don't know how to help him. I think you need to talk to him, Jody. He won't listen to me. Jody's thoughts were spinning. She had thought her world had fallen apart when she'd discovered the affair. But now it felt like the ground beneath her was collapsing entirely. Without a second thought, Jody grabbed her jacket and headed for Alex's apartment. The moment she stepped outside, her heart began to pound. What had Alex gotten himself into? What was he hiding? She hadn't seen him in days, and even the thought of facing him made her stomach churn with unresolved anger. But she couldn't let this go. If there was something more going on, if Alex was in trouble, she couldn't just walk away anymore. She arrived at Alex's building and took the stairs 2 at a time. Her mind raced with questions. Was he in danger? Had Mia been involved in something shady? When she knocked on the door, her heart thudded in her chest. The door opened, and Alex stood there, his expression guarded, almost nervous. Jody, he said, his voice low, but there was a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Alex, we need to talk, she said, her tone firm. Now. He stepped back, allowing her inside, and as she walked into the small apartment, she noticed the disarray, the scattered papers on the floor, the half-empty bottles on the coffee table. The place looked like it had been abandoned in a hurry. Is everything okay? Jody asked, her voice steady, but her insides were a maelstrom of anxiety. Alex's face twitched, and he ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. I don't know what to do anymore. Jody's heart clenched. This wasn't just about Mia and me. What happened, Alex? What's going on? Alex took a deep breath, looking away. I made some bad decisions, some really bad decisions. And now, it's catching up with me. Mia, she didn't know about any of it. It was all on me. But now, I think we're all in deeper than I thought. Jody's mind raced as the pieces began to fall into place. Debt. Deals gone wrong. What was he involved in? Alex, she said slowly, her voice low with urgency. What are you talking about? What have you done? He met her gaze, his eyes filled with something she hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. I got involved with some people I shouldn't have, and now, Jody, I'm in over my head. I need your help. Jody felt the floor shift beneath her. Everything had just gotten 100 times more complicated. The stakes were no longer about betrayal. They were about something far more dangerous, something that could cost her far more than just her trust in her brother and her best friend. Her world had just turned upside down once again, and this time, there would be no walking away. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air as Jody stood in the middle of Alex's apartment, the tension between them unbearable. She had only just begun to process the magnitude of what Alex had told her, the debts, the dangerous people he had involved himself with, the mess that was now swallowing his life whole. And now, the truth had torn apart everything she thought she knew. She had come here expecting to confront him about the affair, to scream, to demand answers. But what she had found was far worse, a threat that wasn't just emotional, but physical. What exactly have you gotten yourself into, Alex? Jody's voice was a low growl, filled with disbelief as she struggled to keep her emotions in check. Her brother, the one person she had always looked up to, who had never let her down before, had become a stranger. A man trapped in a web of his own making, and Jody had to make a choice. She could walk away again, like she had with Mia, but this time, the consequences weren't just about hurt feelings. This time, it was about survival. Alex's face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead as he looked away from her, his eyes darting nervously. I don't know how to get out of this, Jody. These people, they won't just let me go. I owe them more than I can pay back. And now, Mia, she's involved too. They've threatened both of us. Jody's heart sank. How did it get this far, Alex? You never told me. You never even asked for help. I didn't know how, okay? His voice cracked, raw with emotion. I thought I could handle it on my own, but now it's too late. His eyes locked with hers, pleading, I need you, Jody. I need you to help me fix this. She took a step back, her mind reeling. Help you? You've dragged Mia into this, and now you want me to bail you out? Alex stepped forward quickly, his hands raised in defense. No, Jody, that's not it. I never wanted this for her, but you don't understand. These people, they're dangerous. If I don't pay them back, they'll come after both of us. And if Mia gets involved, I don't know what they'll do. Jody could feel her anger rising again, the familiar surge of betrayal and confusion bubbling to the surface. But now, there was something else too. A sense of clarity, of purpose. She had spent the past few weeks focused on her own healing, on rebuilding her own life, but now she had a bigger role to play. The stakes weren't just personal anymore, they were life or death. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. She glanced down and saw a text from Ben. Do you need backup? For a moment, Jody considered what Ben had said. She didn't want to go through this alone, but more than that, she knew Ben was right. She needed to stop reacting to the situation out of hurt and anger. She needed to take control of her own destiny. And that meant facing Alex's mess head on. If Mia and Alex were in danger, it was her responsibility to step up, even if it meant facing the most terrifying part of this whole ordeal. Jody took a deep breath and looked Alex dead in the eye. You're not doing this alone, she said, her voice calm but resolute. We'll figure it out. But you have to tell me everything. Now. Alex nodded, relief flooding his features. I made a deal with a guy named Vince. He's the one running this whole operation. He's into some serious stuff. Drugs, money laundering, weapons. I didn't know what I was getting into. But now I'm in too deep. Vince doesn't care about the money anymore. He just wants to control me. Jody felt her stomach twist. The words were coming out in a jumble, and they were worse than anything she could have imagined. But the more Alex spoke, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about money. It was about power, about being sucked into something so dark and insidious that it threatened to swallow everything, including her brother. And Mia? Jody asked, her voice steely. What does she have to do with all this? Alex's eyes dropped to the floor. I didn't want her involved, but Vince found out about her, and he threatened her to get to me. He said if I didn't help him with his next big job, Mia would be hurt. He faltered, his voice breaking. I never wanted this for her. I never wanted any of this. Jody stood still, her mind racing. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Vince wasn't just after Alex. He was using Mia to control him. The stakes had just gotten a lot higher. And now she had to make a decision that would change everything. Okay, Jody said, her voice hard and determined. We're going to get you out of this. You need to trust me. I trust you, Jody, but what are we supposed to do? Alex's voice cracked with desperation. I don't know who to go to. I don't know how to get out. I'll figure it out, Jody said. Her mind was already working, calculating the next steps. She had learned a lot in the past few weeks about how to take control of her life. Now, it was time to apply that knowledge to save her brother and Mia. You're going to contact Vince. Tell him you've got the money. But you're going to set up a meeting, and when you do, you're going to have backup. Alex's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean, we're not going in there unprepared, Jody said firmly. I've got a plan. But I need you to trust me. No matter what happens, you follow my lead. The air in the apartment felt charged now, like a storm was about to break. Jody felt the gravity of the situation, but she also felt the surge of power that came from taking control. This wasn't just about healing her emotional wounds anymore. This was about saving the people she loved, about stepping into a world she had never asked to be part of, but one she could no longer ignore. Jody dialed Ben's number. I need you to get a team together. We're going after Vince. There was a pause on the other end. You're sure about this? Absolutely, Jody said. We're not letting this go any further. As the plan began to take shape, Jody could feel the stakes rising. This wasn't just a confrontation about trust or betrayal. It was about survival. And for the first time in her life, Jody was fully aware of her own power. The power to fight, to protect, and to control the outcome. The fight ahead would be the most dangerous of her life, but she wasn't backing down. The storm was coming, and Jody was ready to face it head on. The aftermath of the confrontation hit harder than Jody could have ever anticipated. As Vince and his associates were taken down in a carefully orchestrated operation, Alex was finally free from the grip of his debt and the dangerous world he had been caught in. But the victory felt muted, like the air had been knocked out of her, and all the adrenaline that had carried her through the past days drained away. The danger was gone, but the emotional toll lingered. Jody stood in the quiet of her apartment the evening after everything had been resolved, the dim glow of city lights creeping in through her window. She felt empty, yet at peace. The chaos of the last few weeks had been a storm that had torn through her life, reshaping everything. But now, as the dust settled, she realized how much stronger she had become. The girl who had once hidden behind the safety of her friendships and family was gone, replaced by someone who had learned to take charge, to face hard truths, and to make the tough calls. Alex had apologized 1,000 times over, his voice filled with guilt and gratitude. He was safe, and that was all that mattered. Mia, too, had reached out to her, offering apologies, but Jody knew that their friendship, what it had been, could never go back to what it was. The cracks in their bond were too deep now, irreparable. But what surprised Jody the most was her own sense of clarity. In the chaos, she had made a choice. Not just about Alex, not just about Mia, but about her, about who she was and who she wanted to be going forward. She had learned that forgiveness wasn't always about offering it to others. Sometimes it was about forgiving herself for the things she hadn't seen, for the choices she had let slip, by out of love or loyalty. She had learned the hard way that love was not enough to fix everything. And that was the choice she had made, to let go. She sat down on her couch, her fingers tracing the edge of the coffee table absent-mindedly as her mind wandered. Could she forgive Mia? Could she welcome Alex back into her life the way they were before? The answer wasn't as simple as a yes or no, but Jody had realized something vital in the last few days. She didn't have to go back to the past to move forward. She had a future that was hers to shape, one where she could be whole again, without waiting for anyone else's permission, without needing to make everything right for everyone around her. Her phone buzzed again. Ben. She'd kept in touch with him through the entire ordeal, and now she needed to talk to him. "I've been thinking," she said when she answered, her voice steady. "You've got that look in your voice. What's going on?" Ben's tone was light, but there was an underlying curiosity. "I don't know how to explain it," Jody said, sitting back in her chair, "but I think I'm ready to start over. Really start over." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Ben spoke, a quiet but reassuring warmth in his voice. "You're stronger than I think you realize, Jody. And I think this is exactly the right time for you to take that step." Jody smiled to herself, her fingers curling around the phone. "I'm ready to let go of everything, Ben. The past, the betrayal, all of it. I can't change what happened, but I can change where I go from here." She could feel the weight lifting, little by little. She wasn't abandoning her family, and she wasn't turning her back on everything she had loved, but she was finally choosing herself, choosing the life she wanted, not the one forced upon her by other people's actions. The truth was, Jody had always been in control of her fate. She had just needed to find the courage to step into that power. And now, with her brother safe, the betrayal behind her, and her future ahead of her, she felt a sense of peace that she hadn't known she was capable of. As she hung up the phone, Jody stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. The world stretched out before her, filled with endless possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, Jody felt ready to embrace whatever came next. She had faced the storm, had survived, and now she was free. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. The choice to let go had been the hardest thing she'd ever done, but it was the most liberating. And as she stood there, looking at the horizon, Jody knew this was just the beginning of her new journey. The days after everything unraveled were surprisingly quiet. Not the heavy, aching silence that had once haunted Jody after the betrayal, but a calmer, more purposeful stillness. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the world feels fresh and full of possibility again. Jody moved into a new apartment overlooking the park. It was smaller than her last place, simpler, but it felt like hers in a way that nothing had for a long time. She painted the walls herself. Soft, warm tones that reflected the peace she was finally starting to feel, and filled the rooms with plants, books, and soft light. No more pretending. No more spaces filled with ghosts. She returned to work slowly, taking on projects that challenged her creatively, not just ones that paid the bills. She'd started journaling again, something she hadn't done since college, and each entry brought her closer to understanding who she was now. Not just someone who'd been betrayed, or someone who had survived a dangerous mess, but a woman who had made choices, taken risks, and emerged stronger for it. Alex was in therapy and working to rebuild his life as well. Their relationship was tentative, cautious, but honest. Jody wasn't sure if she'd ever fully trust him again, but she was open to letting time show her what could be salvaged. As for Mia, their paths had diverged. No bitterness, no dramatic ending, just distance. And that, Jody realized, was its own kind of closure. What surprised her most was the sense of freedom. Letting go hadn't made her weak. It had given her back control. For so long, she'd been defined by her role in other people's lives. Sister, best friend, problem solver. But now she was simply Jody. No longer fragmented by loyalty or loss, but whole in a way she had never known before. One morning, she stood at her window, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the city. The light spilled across the floor, casting golden hues on the hardwood. She smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because it didn't need to be. The past had shaped her, yes, but it no longer defined her. She was moving forward, not with vengeance or regret, but with clarity, with the quiet power of someone who had found her voice, her strength, and her peace. Her story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. 6 months later, Jody found herself standing before a room full of strangers at a community writing workshop, her palms slightly sweaty, her notebook trembling in her hands. She took a breath and began to read the opening lines of her latest piece, a short story loosely inspired by a woman who rebuilt her life after everything fell apart. As she spoke, she saw heads nodding, eyes lighting with recognition. Her words carried weight, not just because they were well crafted, but because they were real, honest, earned. After the reading, a woman approached her. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I've been through something like that. I didn't know anyone else would understand." Jody smiled, something warm blooming in her chest. "That's why we write," she said, "to remind each other we're not alone." Her life wasn't a dramatic transformation with grand gestures or picture-perfect moments. It was made of smaller victories, quiet mornings, shared stories, the choice to keep growing even when it was hard. Ben was still in her life, steady and supportive, though there were no labels, no pressure, just connection, possibility. They both understood that healing wasn't about returning to who you were before, but becoming someone new with everything you've learned. Jody no longer needed to prove anything to anyone, not even herself. She had faced the truth, made her peace, and found a new way forward. And somewhere between what was and what could be, she had rediscovered the most powerful thing of all: choice.